Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sir Hunt on X on a gorgeous 70-plus degree day out here in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States of America. Back after a 4-day hiatus, enjoying this wonderful weather. I hope everyone out there had themselves a wonderful day, wonderful weekend, as well as a wonderful Monday the previous day. Today is the 26th of August of the calendar year 2025, and there's a lot to get to today, and with, of course, the football season coming up. Of course, an historical aspect in the world of boxing in terms of historical pound-for-pound rating stature I'm going to touch on later. And, of course, a couple other things I like to just elaborate about because it's a wonderful thing because we're pushing on the 1-year anniversary of when I decided to go full circle on this and go all in. And I did it where I did it for when I started it last year, outdoors, outside my own house, outside of the eastern suburbs of Cincinnati, Ohio, where it's nice and quiet. You see gorgeous land, a big house, and hope everyone had themselves a wonderful day today. Now we're going to get right down to it. Some newbies out here who wanted to join my channel, welcome aboard. A little bit of what I do, current sports topics, most notably in the NFL and in the other sports. Boxing is more historical than it is of the current due to the fact that it is of a comical circus nature that I refuse to partake in. So I stick on the historical aspect of it. If you're looking for more boxing content, I can point you to others for the current one. But if you like the historical aspect, you've come to the right place, and I will touch on a couple of those here in a bit. But I'm going to get right down to it. I'm going to give a brief NFL preview because that's what I did around this time last year. So here I am doing it again. Not as detailed as last year because I'm going to do that next week when I dig deeper. I'm going to give a brief synopsis of each conference, each team, and each division. Just more of the storylines and, all the question marks going in because everyone is always talking about what's coming up, what's going here. Of course, a couple major contract signings that took place yesterday. I'll touch on those here in a bit. Of course, start with the AFC. The AFC East is, of course, the kingpin there is the Buffalo Bills, who's probably going to be the kingpin again, win that game by 4 to 5 games. But it's not about winning regular season games or winning, the division anymore because they've done that over the past 4 to 5 years since they got Josh Allen as their quarterback. The reigning MVP might go back-to-back this season. But the question now becomes, you've got to that hump. Are you going to be able to get over the hump finally? Is it going to be possible you can get over the hump against the Kansas City Chiefs? Because, the last 4 playoffs, you haven't been able to beat Kansas. Even one time you had them on your own field, I think it was 2023, and you couldn't get the job done there either. So the question now becomes, can you get the job done when it matters? I thought you had a decent offseason. You brought back James Cook, who I think is a perfect fit for what Buffalo does. I said before, I think he's a fit for what Buffalo does, also what Buffalo needs. And the Buffalo system is perfect for James Cook's skill set. But I think that's where we're headed toward when we talk about the particulars on this one. So let's go. That's going to be the next step. They're going to win the division. They'll probably win 13 or 14 games. If they don't play around, I think they can flirt with getting the number 1 seed. But the question is, can they finally get over the hump? Because the hurdle is that team in Kansas City. But then that team in Kansas City has been everybody's hurdle since Patrick Mahomes came into the league. Well, I'll touch on the AFC West here in a minute. But I like they had a solid off season. Got Josh Allen's contract put together. Extended Christian Benford. Drafted Maxwell Harrison, who I believe is going to be on the IR slated to return list, whatever that is. But they have a nice team. They're probably going to be the favorites to win that division. But it's not about winning the division or regular season accolades anymore. You've gone to the hump. You've played the kingpin of the AFC in Kansas City. You played them 4 times. Close but no cigar. Can you finally get over the hump? I mean, at some point, I think they will. I'll touch on my predictions on that when I bring my prediction show next week. So, but I'll leave that as it is. That's the Buffalo Bills. Now we're going to go down south to a team who I think is basically in a case of do something or might as well start to clean house. And that's a team down south in Miami. Everyone's going to talk about the Tua injury. I don't talk about healthy players because I think it's just a disrespectful thing to do. But the question with this is, can you guys win games that matter most in the regular season? 1-5 the last season against teams with winning records. The year before that, the same thing. Actually, your one win 2 seasons ago was basically against a Dallas team that just imploded down the stretch. And you, in the month of December, your record's not all that great. And we travel up north to places like Foxborough and Buffalo, you're not that much better either, because that's what's happened to you guys over there. We talk about the Miami Dolphins. When you guys going to get over that hump? And basically, you made a huge investment when you got Tyreek Hill from Kansas City. That hasn't really panned off because you only had one playoff appearance as a result. And now you have Jalen Waddle, who's been in and out of the lineup. You finally got to resolve the Jalen Ramsey saga, send him to Pittsburgh for Minkah Fitzpatrick. You, of course, you had to try to add Mike Hilton to the roster, but you released him today. I don't know what's going on down there in Miami. You have the talent to do something because, Tua, it's mine's in the game. I'm not going to talk about the health perspective because I think that's disrespectful. But when you talk about the talent that Tua has and when he puts his mind to it, he can be as good as any quarterback in the league. And you have the weapons, the caliber of Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. You should be able to do something with that offense. Of course, a couple of seasons ago, they hung 70 on the Denver Broncos in a regular season game, but it basically been irrelevant really since that point on offense. But it's going to come down to what can you guys win big games when it matters most? Can you win the games in November, December, and January against winning record teams? Because your record against teams with winning records down there in Miami isn't all that great. And that's what it comes down to. Because you got to, it's now, you get the job, do something significant, get to the playoffs and make a run, or you might as well just start sending people out the door, especially head coach Mike McDaniel, who I think you should be on a short leash going into the season. Because there's a lot of underachieving going on with that roster over there. Now, we made their defense a little bit. Let's see where that goes. But they have to do something. Otherwise, you might as well just send Mike McDaniel out or start the thing from scratch because you're in an interesting phase over there in Miami. Maybe the most improved team, not just in the division, but maybe the all AFCs in New England Patriots. We talk about all the acquisitions they had, the drafting of TreVeyon Henderson and Campbell at the left tackle position. I mean, they're going to be competitive. They hired Mike Vrabel to get them in the right direction. Of course, the standout preseason that TreVeyon Henderson has had for the Patriots, I think is going to do wonders for them. Of course, they also have Ramondre Stevenson, pretty darn good 1-2 punch at the running back position. Question, of course, is can Drake May take them to take himself to the next level going up there because he had a standout rookie season. He has targets now, especially when you consider Stephon Diggs in that roster. But now for them, you got to be able to improve and get better because you made the investments. You should be able to get an 8-9, 9-8-ish type season. I don't know if it's good enough to get to the playoffs, especially when you consider how loaded the AFC is this season because it's going to be fully loaded again. But I expect a dramatic improvement. I expect Mike Vrabel to have his imprints on this team. I expect the Patriots to be competitive, and that's what some people haven't gone to the playoffs. I wouldn't go that far, but I think they'll be competitive in the AFC. Mike Vrabel will have those guys ready to go. Remember what they did week 1 here in Cincinnati last season. That should tell you how competitive they are. And, of course, the fourth place team in that division is, of course, the New York Jets, which, by the way, I should tell you guys over there in New York, start singing the blues because it's going to be a long one because the makeup of that roster, not particularly great. You sent Derek Nandi to the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, you got Justin Fields after you sent Aaron Rodgers out the door. You got the big contract for Garrett Wilson. Question is, will Breece Hall carry the team as much as possible? Who knows? That team's going to probably finish in the bottom because that's going to be a long one. Complete makeover needed on that particular roster. It's going to be a little bit because there's a lot of cap hits that need to clear out. So that's the AFC East. Now to the AFC South. And the standout there is the Houston Texans, obviously. Tank Dell's not coming back. You got to get hopefully a healthy Nick Chubb because Joe Mixon's on the IR. But you still have C.J. Stroud. You still have that stout defense. And but the question is going to be, can that offensive line, which did a total makeover from last season, protect C.J. Stroud? Remember what happened in the championship game at Kansas City where C.J. Stroud got everything but killed on that particular game? And I mean, he got beat up quite good. Can they protect that franchise quarterback down there in Houston? If they can, I can see him getting a playoff win again. But can they do enough to get over the big three in the AFC, which is Buffalo, Baltimore, and Kansas City? Because when they win their one division game at home, the playoff game at home, it's the end game. Not good enough to get past a Baltimore or a Kansas City yet. That's going to be the next step. Can they finally do whatever to get over that hump? But it starts in the trenches, especially on the offensive line, because we saw what happened in that playoff game against Kansas City, where C.J. Stroud just couldn't get anything going, and he got train wrecked. And they have a franchise quarterback to protect. And we talk about franchise quarterbacks in the AFC South. There is one in Jacksonville named Trevor Lawrence. It's time for you to step up and actually do something, because you got Jacksonville to the playoffs 2 seasons ago, and basically couldn't do anything other than that. Jacksonville made the investment of nearly $280 million in you, and now you have Brian Thomas Jr. on one side, you have Travis Hunter on the other side. Of course, you have Travis Etienne in the backfield. Offensive line is stout, but you got to get the job done. You have the targets, no excuses. You better start making headways when you're talking about your doing something in Jacksonville. I think another team that's going to probably flirt in that 7 to 8 win type category. Anything more than that is going to depend on whether or not Trevor Lawrence can find himself again. Because the last 2 years, this guy's been absolutely close to irrelevant status, especially with all the investment they made. We're talking about this particular the investment they made. They got to do something to get it done, because you're not paying a guy $280 million to have eight win seasons or finish in the bottom like they did last season. I think they'll be better, but we'll see where it goes. And now we have the Tennessee Titans, who I think is going to on the rise. I mean, I like what they did in the offseason, especially when we talk about drafting Cam Ward. The head coach, Brian Callahan, hasn't going to have him playing in the right direction. It's going to take 2 to 3 years before we talk about them as a playoff contender, but I think they'll be competitive in many more games. And then there's the Indianapolis Colts. Just like the New York Jets, just be prepared to have a top 5 overall pick, because you're not going anywhere. I do like the drafting of Tyler Warren at the tight end position out of Penn State. I thought he was probably, in terms of offense, one of the better ones pound for pound in that 2025 draft class. Fell to your lap. Good draft pick there. Of course, starting Daniel Jones over Anthony Richardson was a no-brainer, because that's why Daniel Jones took the job, knowing he can overtake Anthony Richardson for the starting job. Who knows what happens with Anthony Richardson's future? Another topic for another day. But be prepared to be picking in the top 5, because that thing is going to be not all that great for you guys over there in Indy. And of course, it's a far cry from when you had Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck during those years for the longest time. So it's going to be a long year. I do like the young pieces, but it's going to take it a while, because you have some areas that need looked at and looked at hard, especially when you lost a guy like Ryan Kelly in the offseason at the left guard position, which that's not going to help whoever's at the quarterback position. Good luck. Now we're going to transfer to the AFC West. And I think this might be the most competitive division. But last time I checked, they still have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, so they deserve to be the favorites, rightfully so. And they extended Trey Smith the year before. They extended Creed Humphrey. They draft Josh Simmons, retooled that defense, brought back Derek Nunge from the Jets. Basically spent his whole career there. I think it's a solid acquisition. They're still going to be the team to beat in at least the AFC West, and most definitely the AFC, because no one's knocked them out. Until these two I see them knocked out, they're going to be the favorites, rightfully so. Anyone can play all their conspiracy theories on Kansas City. It's not going to matter. They're still the team to beat, and I expect the team to play with a bit of a chip on their shoulder after what happened in the Super Bowl when they were embarrassed by Philadelphia. But I do like the acquisition of Josh Simmons. When they drafted him, when they fell to his lap, I think it was 31st overall. Remember, Simmons had the ACL injury at Ohio State, and he was pegged to be a top 10 to 15 overall pick. That should tell you what Kansas City had fallen to their lap, and it's been basically a perfect fit for the team. And he had an excellent preseason, excellent training camp, just a physical specimen to protect the blind side of Patrick Mahomes, which is something they've needed for the last 4 to 5 years since they last had Eric Fisher. And they probably got stabilized there. Probably the premier interior O-line combo of Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. They're still going to protect Patrick Mahomes, and that's why they're going to be the team to beat, at least in the AFC West. I say probably in the AFC as well. Now to what took place in move on to the Denver Broncos. I apologize. I had an error message on my screen. For some reason, they have them as the pick to win the AFC West and at least the AFC. Some people have them thinking they could go to the Super Bowl. Now, I'll admit, that defense is lights out. I mean, probably argue the most lights out defense in the entire league. Some others may have a claim to it. But when you talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and when they the stranglehold on the division, Denver's going to be coming. And I think they're going to be coming strong. They extended Cortland Sutton. That's secondary led by Patrick Surtain, lights out. For them to take the next step, we're going to see how good Bo Nix is going to be. Had a very, very good rookie season. But we're going to find out real quickly. We talk about this particular scenario with Bo Nix. I expect him to get better. They're going to win 11, 12 games and get in the wild card. That's going to be a lock because they're probably the best team outside of the big three in the AFC. We talk about Kansas, Buffalo, and Baltimore. So they're going to get there. For them to get to the next level, we'll see if Bo Nix can take the next step. They did get J.K. Dobbins as a running back insurance to help out. Good acquisition there. But that's where I think everything is going to end. They'll get to the playoffs. I don't think they're good enough to overtake Kansas yet, but they're getting better, and they're coming. Which leads me to the Los Angeles Chargers. When you're talking about this particular team, just like Trevor Lawrence out there in Jacksonville, same goes for Justin Herbert, especially when you consider what happened to him in Houston in that playoff game when he looked like basically a third-string quarterback at the very best, and that's saying a whole lot, and I'm being kind when it comes to this. He has the targets, he has a team, but he's got to get the job done and get a playoff win somehow because he's been there, and he's basically crapped the bed when you're talking about what took place with this particular team. And I apologize for errors that's coming through my screen. I'm doing this simultaneously. When we talk about the Los Angeles Chargers, the system is still there with Jim Harbaugh and that particular offense. The defense is still going to be solid. They lost Joey Bosa. He went to Buffalo. But maybe it's a case of addition by subtraction because Joey Bosa last year and year and a half when he was there, when he played, he didn't do much. But it's more about him not playing versus him playing. And, of course, there's still the stigma of 3 playoff seasons ago when they went to Jacksonville and blew a 30-0 lead, and that still resonates. Basically, we talk about this particular team. And basically, they haven't recovered ever since. Can they recover and get to that point? We'll find out. But Justin Herbert better start, for him to be considered in that elite category, he better start leading the Chargers to playoff wins. Which leads to the Las Vegas Raiders. You get Picaro, you got Geno Smith, you draft Alshon Jeffrey. Defense has a remake. You extended Max Crosby. You got Jermaine Pratt. Better, but still behind the 8 ball. It's going to be a while for you guys. Largely because you're in the AFC West. I mean, you're still miles behind the Chiefs. You're miles behind the Broncos, and significantly behind the Chargers. But you're going to get better. Wouldn't be surprised if that team had four teams finishing with at least 7 wins, because it might be the top better divisions in the NFL this season, the AFC West. But the Raiders got a way to go. They have a direction now, which is something they needed since they took over. The Tom Brady took over that team. They did get Kenny Pickett as a backup quarterback from the Browns earlier today, which we know the Cleveland Brown quarterback situation is just a mess. Somebody had to go. But good job for the Raiders getting that. They'll be better, but I think there's still a ways to go before we can talk about them as a serious contender for the AFC West crown or even the playoffs because of how loaded the AFC is, and it's going to be again this season. And now we move forward to the AFC North. Of course, the cream of the crop there, the Baltimore Ravens, probably going to be the cream of the crop again. I mean, what more can you say? Extended Derrick Henry, redid his contract. Isaiah likely going to be one of the if he's ready to go by week 1. If you're a fantasy owner, you have him, put him on because I think he's going to have a pretty darn good season. Everybody still talks about him missing the touchdown by a toe, but still a pretty darn good tight end for Baltimore as a target for Lamar Jackson. Defense did a good job retooling that secondary in the linebacker core in the draft and in free agency. I think they'll be better than last season. Of course, everybody talks about the defense. That defense basically bad in 2 games against Cincinnati, which We know Cincinnati puts points up on anyone. But Baltimore is still going to be the cream of the crop in the division. Question is, like Buffalo, can they get over the hump against that team in Kansas? Because they did it. They were there 2 years ago. They couldn't get quite over it. Can they get over the hump finally and to become the cream of the crop and knock off the big guns of the AFC, which has been the question mark over the last couple of seasons over there in Baltimore? We'll find out. But they're probably going to be the favorites. Behind them is the Pittsburgh Steelers. We know they had a unique total changeover with the offseason. Got rid of Russell Wilson. It's brought in the Aaron Rodgers. Drafted Will Howard, but he's on the sideline, of course, with a fractured hand. Sent George Pickens out the door because of being the diva that he is, rightfully so. Brought in DK Metcalf, a receiver. Of course, they reworked and redone the contract of TJ Watt. He's going to be a Steeler for life. Well done by the Steelers front office. The Cam Hayward situation, everyone's talking about it. I expect him to be there once the season starts. Some kind of resolution will be done. I can't see that carrying over into the regular season. Of course, acquiring Jalen Ramsey for Minkah Fitzpatrick, which has set sparks in the Steeler Nation, where Fitzpatrick was just a fixture over there for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think Ramsey would do quite well in that particular system. I expect a mini resurrection from him to get that defense going. They drafted Derek Harmon, who's thinks going to miss a month because of an injury in preseason, but a good nose tackle fit. And, of course, Jack Sawyer from Ohio State, who I think is going to be a good fit in the schemes Pittsburgh does over there. Pittsburgh's still going to win their 9 to 10 games. Question is, can they make a deep run like they used to? We'll find out. I mean, as long as Mike Tomlin is there, they're going to win 9 to 10 games, much to the chagrin of everyone who thinks they're going to finally bottom out. They'll win 9 to 10 games, probably get a playoff spot, and that's where it's probably going to end. Because at some point, never having a losing record and not going deep in the playoffs is where some accountability needs to be held over there. But I think people, once again, are writing Pittsburgh short. I think they'll find a way to get into the playoffs, get their 9 to 10 wins, and the conversation would stop. They just find a way to win. Got to respect it at least. And, of course, here in Cincinnati, you got the contracts. You got the contracts. Of course, now the other one with Trey Hendrickson the other day. Not only got the contracts, now you got to get the job done. Can you get the job done? And can the Bengals fans learn how to shut up and actually be adults for once? That's a burning question. Can the Bengals fans shut up and be adults, laugh the social media platforms, and quit worrying about what took place Week 18 last season in the whole fiasco with Kansas City? Because it's over with. You guys got to move on. Can you guys just shut up and actually enjoy the games? That's a burning question with Bengals fans. Because other than that, they don't have anything much to offer. It's come down to whether or not Bengals fans can shut up and just move on and quit trash talking. Enough of the conversation on that one. But all jokes aside, I expect them to get their 9 and 8 season again to fall short because that defense outside of Trey Hendrickson is not NFL qualified. Anyone on that roster, they should just release everyone on that defense today and kept Trey Hendrickson. Problem was nobody over there has the balls to do it. That's a problem, and that's why they're going to fail again. And can they solidify Lucas Patrick as a right guard to help protect Joe Burrow? We saw what happened in Washington in the preseason game. That's a burning question. But the biggest one is, can you Bengals fans and your super fans and the Cincinnati media just shut up and enjoy the games? That's what it comes to with you guys. That's a question probably will never be answered. And, of course, speaking of teams in Ohio, that team in northeastern Ohio, the Cleveland Browns, is going to be another long one because you're still the Cleveland Browns. The good thing you did was you put Deshaun Watson on the physically unable to perform list, which for him means no more happy endings for him over there in Cleveland because the contract is done and they can probably just kick him out the door, which basically just ends an ugly chapter for the Cleveland organization. Solidify the quarterback position. We talk about Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders. We know about the Sanders phenomenon, but it's still going to be another long one. Be prepared to pick in the top 5 again in this year's upcoming draft because the makeup of your roster is just not all that great. You might win week 1 against Cincinnati, but that doesn't really see much at the end of the day because everybody beats Cincinnati week 1. So there's my brief AFC preview. I'll pick the official winners and all that stuff next week when I break this down even further. Now to the NFC. I'll make this one short and sweet. NFC East, the Philadelphia Eagles. Story there, can you repeat? Lost quite a few key pieces on defense. But, the Super Bowl hangover, it's doable. Probably still the favorite to win the NFC East. Probably be in at least an NFC title game. Super Bowl hangover or not, we'll find out. Washington, you got the McLaurin contract. Now you're back in play again because the wide receiver room outside of McLaurin is just terrible. The question is, can the defense step up? And what are you going to get out of your running game? Now you sent Brian Robinson to San Francisco because I'm not sure Austin Eckler is the guy over there. There's another guy that they like. I can't remember his name. So he'll probably get more of the snaps. We talk about the Washington Commanders. Can Jaden Daniels continue his impressive play from his rookie season, which I think he will? I mean, the guy is just a mature human being. And I said all along, Chicago should have taken him over Caleb Williams. And you're going to find out why this season. So Washington's in play. They're going to probably get their 10-plus wins and make the playoffs. Dallas, they get George Pickens. But you're basically the Bengals 2.0 when everything's on the offense. Your defense isn't all that great. But the question on the defensive side is, can Jerry Jones actually grow a pair and take care of Micah Parsons? Because Jerry Jones hasn't grown a pair since he lost his pair when Jimmy Johnson ripped it off on him when they won the 2 Super Bowls. And because he lost his pair, that's why Jerry Jones fired Jimmy Johnson. And Jerry Jones has been irrelevant ever since. It's plain and simple. When you talk about Dallas, I mean, Dak Prescott, say what you want about him. He puts up good numbers over there, good stats, gets you good enough wins to be a competitive team over there in Dallas. I mean, his record within that division is very formidable. I mean, that's one thing people forget. He's got a formidable record in the NFC East. I mean, as good as anyone. I mean, maybe they get on a lower seed because if they can get George Pickens hit on his shoulders the way they should, you're talking about a perfect complement to CeeDee Lamb over there and Big D and another target for Dak Prescott. They're going to be putting points up, but can the defense actually do something? That's going to be the burning question. And, of course, the New York Giants, of the multi-quarterbacks with Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and, of course, the drafting of Jackson Dart, who had a very terrific preseason. But I do like the drafting of Abdul Carter, who I called pound for pound the best player in the 2025 NFL draft. Put him in that front line with Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns, and they're going to be wreaking havoc. But it's still going to be a long season because there's no stability at the quarterback position. And a receiver opposite Malik Neighbors, who's I think is going to be better in year 2. Question moving forward is, what is the Giants' direction? Do they even have one? I mean, just like the Browns. I mean, I don't even know what direction they have. I mean, you got Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, and you drafted Jackson Dart. That's where everything's supposed to start at that position because that's where the most stable is out of all of them. So that's where the Giants are headed. Probably a top 5, top 6 NFL pick in the 2026 draft there again is what I fully expect. Now, probably to the best division in that conference, the NFC North. Detroit Lions. The team that's probably the team to beat still in that division. I know they lost their top 2 coordinators, Ben Johnson to the Chicago, Aaron Glenn to the New York Jets. I think it'll be bigger than people think. Question is going to be how good of a coach Dan Campbell can be because he leaned on both those guys for the last couple of years. Now, they have a talented team top to bottom, probably as good as anyone in the NFC, there's no doubt. But when situational football comes around and he's going to have to make the call, can he do it? I mean, they're still going to win their 10, 11 games, 12 games because the offense is still going to be a juggernaut with Montgomery, Gibbs at running back, St. Brown, and Williams as a receiver. Of course, everyone's going to have their opinions on Jared Goff, but he still wins games, so you got to give him that. He does still win games, so that's what it comes down to with that. Now, of course, we talk about the Green Bay Packers. Can Jordan Love hold up? I like the drafting of Matthew Golden. I think it's a steal for them, gives a target for him to go to, and that's what we have with the Green Bay Packers. So I expect them to be better, get a defense get better, and if they can get better with a healthy Jordan Love, I think they're going to go places. There's sort of a pick to come out of the NFC. I understand it. I'll make that prediction over the next couple of days. Wouldn't be surprised if they stole the division from Detroit because I like Jordan Love at quarterback when he's on, you're talking about a hands-down top 6 or 7 quarterback in the entire NFL. That's how good of a quarterback Jordan Love is. You have the Minnesota Vikings, a loaded roster, maybe a Super Bowl paid roster on paper. Question is, what are you going to get out of J.J. McCarthy? Because that's been the burning question in Minnesota, especially when you let Sam Darnold walk to Seattle. Because if you get anything out of him, he might do something. Of course, the guy's coming off the meniscus injury over in Minnesota, over in Michigan, was drafted. Training camp had the meniscus injury, missed the entire season. Can he come back and actually produce? Now, of course, they're going to not have Jordan Addison for 3 games because Jordan Addison was just flat stupid to drive drunk. But they still have Justin Jefferson. They still have a nice roster. Aaron Jones at running back. And I think they're going to get their 10-11 wins also and make the playoffs. Won't have the team they had last season because basically Sam Darnold played a little over his head when he was retired his aspiring contract. That's what he had with him. So we'll see where that one goes. And, of course, the Chicago Bears. They get Ben Johnson to try and get something going with Caleb Williams. Now, they totally remade their roster. I liked it. They have, of course, Rome Odunze. They drafted as a wide receiver last year. And I think a guy like Ben Johnson with his offensive mind could be what the doctor ordered for Caleb Williams. Problem is, I still think the Bears are still a year or two away from being competitive in that division, where the other 3 teams, we talk about Detroit, Green Bay, and Minnesota, are as good as anyone in that, basically the cream of the crop in that division, and as good as anyone in at least the NFC. That tells you how deep that division is. NFC South, we talk about the cream of the crop is still going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield to Mike Evans. Becca, the standout wide receiver from Ohio State, who I think is going to be a hand and glove fit. You get Chris Godwin fully healthy. That's a heck of a 3 wide receiver core Baker Mayfield's going to have. Tristan Wirfs, Vita Ray, list goes on. A terrific roster, a ton of homegrown talent over there in Tampa. They're probably going to be the favorites to win the division. Probably when I make my pick, they're going to be mine to win it. And I think they're winning that one going away because I don't think that one's going to be close. Question is, can they do more than just win the division? Make a deep run and become an NFC contender? They have the talent to do it. Now it's about putting it together. A lot of flack given to Todd Bowles as their head coach. I get it. But who are you going to replace him with? He just got an extension, him and the GM Matt Light, which is perfect for the success they've had over the past couple seasons. It was well-deserved. And the question is going to be moving forward, can they do anything deeper? And, of course, when you talk about the NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons, what do you get out of year 2 out of Michael Penix Jr.? And, of course, can Bijan Robinson continue his enormous run? He's on my fantasy team. He better. So, question is, can they compete in the NFC South with Tampa? Of course, they swept the season series last season from Tampa, but that was with Kirk Cousins. We're about to find out what Michael Penix Jr. is made of. Carolina, improving team, but still a little bit to go. Bryce Young showed signs of being a better quarterback last season as it went on. Of course, they have Xavier Leggetti as a target for him to go to. Still a little behind, but I expect him to get many more wins because Young started to show signs of getting better as last year went on. And the capper, of course, is the New Orleans Saints. Another team is going to probably tank for Arch Manning, picking the top 5. That situation is a mess. Now I move on to the NFC West. The Los Angeles Rams. Can Matthew Stafford's body hold up? And I think Devontae Adams is an upgrade over Cooper Kupp at that position, wide receiver position, opposite Puka Nacua. They extended Kyren Williams earlier this season, which I think he was a perfect fit for what McVay does in that offense. You get a healthy Matthew Stafford, they might just come out of the NFC again, like they did a couple years ago. I mean, it depends on how Stafford's body can hold up. Defense is going to be better, especially talk about Jared Verse on the defensive front, who was just a problem, a la Aaron Donald when Donald was there, and we know what a problem Aaron Donald was. Probably going to be the favorites. Question is who's going to finish second. Seattle. They did get Cooper Kupp and the long contract to Sam Darnold. Question is where do they go from here? They have Kenneth Walker, obviously, at the running back position. But, is it good enough to overtake the Rams for the NFC West? Then you have the San Francisco 49ers, a couple years removed from being in the second Super Bowl with Kansas City. But again, the injury bug hit him last season. Looks like it's going to hit him again this season. Can they find a way to stay healthy, especially the wide receiver position? We'll find out. Because when they're healthy, they're as good as anyone. They're talking like Christian McCaffrey's back into form. We'll find out soon enough. And the capper of this one is, of course, the NFC West is the Arizona Cardinals. I thought they had a good draft, but the problem is Walter Nolan's going to miss the first 4 games. That's going to mess up their defensive interior. I thought they should have found a number 2 opposite Marvin Harrison Jr., which they didn't. But, we'll find out what's going to be made of. Do or not, just like I said for Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert, same thing for Kyler Murray. You got to step up and perform and do something significant. Otherwise, it might be time for Arizona to look at other options, just like it is in LA and Jacksonville with their quarterbacks. Brief preview, further preview next week, and I will break it down further and give you my official predictions. A couple things in the NFL before I move on. Of course, with the restructured contract of Trey Hendrickson. I mean, I don't know why everyone's going crazy over it. I mean, I said all along a deal was going to be done, and it was done. A deal was done, and it was done. Nothing more, nothing less, for better or for worse. You're talking about a team that's going to probably be the 32nd ranked defense with him, and they were going to be the 32nd ranked defense before him. Because I said, outside of Trey Hendrickson, all the guys on the defensive side of the NFL roster for the Bengals should have been out the door, but nobody has the balls to do that in Cincinnati. Nobody has the balls to call that out in Cincinnati. And then we're going to have another failure because of it. I said Terry McLaurin got the contract with Washington. I said that's one that's going to be done. Win-win for both sides. We talk about Washington and McLaurin. Doesn't hold on to them too much longer, but Lauren gets paid among the top receivers in the NFL. As good as anyone, and is compensated for what he had to put up with over the last few years over the previous regime, going through multiple quarterbacks. And now you have a Jaden Daniels on a rookie contract. It made sense for Washington to get something done with McLaurin, and that happened. And the capper is Amari Cooper going back to LA with Las Vegas with the Raiders. Surprised none of the top teams who needed another receiver picked him up, because I still think he's a capable wide receiver for a team like Pittsburgh or Minnesota who needed a number 2 opposite of what they have over there on their rosters. Surprised it came this late to pick him up. I think he has more than enough game left. Solid pickup for the Raiders. So that touches on my NFL segment. Now to the world of boxing. And for the new followers over here, just want to let you know, I do historical versus today's, because today's is not worth talking about. And maybe one of the most significant ones took place 82 years ago today in New York. It was Sugar Ray Robinson decisioning Henry Armstrong for the passing of the torch of the distinction of the greatest pound-for-pound fighter. Because for the longest time, that distinction, when you're talking about the 3 simultaneous championships, was worn by Henry Armstrong. Here comes Sugar Ray Robinson. And in this particular fight, Henry Armstrong was basically a shell of himself. And Ray Robinson just dominated from start to finish. And by Robinson's own admission, he admitted to just letting Henry Armstrong last a distance with him because of the prestige that Henry Armstrong had as the greatest pound-for-pound fighter at that time. Point to this night as the passing of the torch. We know the story of this one with not only the passing of the torch, ascending Sugar Ray Robinson to that official distinction of the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time. And maybe the most poignant quote was Henry Armstrong saying after the fight, "Even at my best, no way I could beat this guy." He blunt said it openly and admitted it, which tells you the recognition and the greatness of why Sugar Ray Robinson wore that distinction of the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time. And that's what that was 82 years ago. The distinction and the torch was passed because that distinction that Henry Armstrong wore for the longest time, he started to show his downturn, especially after losing his welterweight championship and his lightweight championship, to face a guy like Ray Robinson. And Ray Robinson just basically just took it, basically just let the fight survive the distance out of respect to the greatness of Armstrong. Robinson admitted it, but it was a passing of the torch, and Robinson from that point on officially wore that distinction of the greatest fighter in the world, pound for pound. People forget Henry Armstrong had that distinction when he went simultaneous in 3 weight classes. That's one thing everybody misses. I mean, 3 world titles simultaneously in the 1 belt era, that meant something back then. And of course, another one that took place, this one took place 41 years ago today. This was Mike McCallum and Julian Jackson, undefeated champion versus undefeated number 1 contender. After the 4 Kings decided not to have nothing to do with either of these guys, Mike McCallum wins a vacant championship, faces the hard-hitting Julian Jackson, two guys who are known for heavy hands but have different tactics, and it showed on this night. Basically, in the first round of this, Julian Jackson, probably for his brute power, had moderate success and showed his power, but the chin of Mike McCallum doesn't get talked about enough. Took the punch as well, and as the second round came on, Mike McCallum showed why his nickname was a body snatcher and why he was one of the premier ring technicians of his time. His ability to start with the body and then go to the head, mixed combinations, well, especially in those weight classes, was better than anyone else. And in that second round, when he stepped it up, Julian Jackson just had no answers, and the fight was stopped. This came after Thomas Hearns, Roberto Duran, and Sugar Ray Leonard wanted nothing to do with either of these guys, especially Mike McCallum, which is well chronicled on many outlets. And Mike McCallum was still fighting for respect. He still remained undefeated, and he still was trying to get the fights with Hearns, Duran, who were both under especially Hearns, who was under the Emmanuel Stewart Kronk gym stable like Mike McCallum was. This was one of the fights after Mike McCallum left the Kronk gym and went with Lou Duva and George Benton to go on an impressive run at junior middleweight, which basically it peaked 3 years later in '87 with that perfect one-punch KO of Donald Curry. Mike McCallum was a pro's pro, very skilled, a problem for anyone in any era, especially when we consider the fact they call him the body snatcher, and there was a reason for it. He knew how to snatch the body when he put his punches together, and when he snatched the body out of you, you might as well forget it. Because when he takes a body out, then he starts going for the head, and he starts getting the victories that way. That's what he did 41 years ago when he fought the hard-hitting Julian Jackson, arguably the hardest puncher south of the heavyweight division ever, and just basically sapped his power, beat him down, and got a second-round knockout out of it. That's what made Mike McCallum a special fighter. And the last one I'm going to touch on, because we don't talk about these divisions much, but this guy deserves his due. Maybe the greatest in these weight classes. It was Ricardo Lopez. Ricardo Lopez breaking down Alex Sanchez to unify 2/3 of a super strawweight championship. Strawweight, which is south of 108 pounds. Division nobody talks about because everyone pays attention to the bigger guys. But if you were a fan of that time and you followed these divisions for the longest time, you had a fan like none other when you talk about Ricardo Lopez. And I coined the phrase beautiful fighters for the longest time, and he certainly was one when you consider what he did in that weight class, reigned for the longest time. And when he stopped Alex Sanchez, a tough fighter in those weight classes after he won a title, basically cemented his place in history. He could never get the big fights we talk about in those weight classes, the premier two being Michael Carbajal and Alberto Chiquita Gonzalez. He still managed to fight on, still managed to stay active. It was one of the better fighters, probably the greatest fighter south of 112 pounds. I mean, it's not even debatable. I mean, the only reason why he couldn't get those fights was because both guys, Carbajal and Gonzalez, wore each other out after that trilogy in the early 90s and basically got beat down by inferior opposition as their careers went on. But while that was happening, Lopez was still cleaning house. Got a technical draw in his next fight over Rosendo Alvarez, but avenged that 8 months later. And of course, in early '99, beat Will Grigsby to win the flyweight championship from 105 to 108. Ricardo Lopez was a case of not one thing great, but he did everything very good because he did it for such a long time, especially in those weight classes. That's what made him great. And no one did it to perfection, poetry in motion, in those weight classes the way Ricardo Lopez did. And he was a phenom. And we talk about not getting a fight with Chiquita Gonzalez. Remember, Chiquita Gonzalez lost to Samas Rajadurong in '95. The same Samas Rajadurong who was obliterated in 2 rounds by Ricardo Lopez 2 years earlier. So it made no sense for a Lopez-Rajadurong rematch. So that's why Ricardo Lopez was stuck, because the fights with Carbajal and Gonzalez weren't happening because those two were beating each other up. And then after they were done beating each other up, they got beat up, and Ricardo Lopez was left with nothing. But still retired with an unbeaten record a premier run in the strawweight and light flyweight divisions that probably puts him number 1 all time in those categories. I don't even know who's number 2, because that's how far ahead Ricardo Lopez was. And what he did to Alex Sanchez 28 years ago tonight pretty much proves it. You don't see fighters in those weight classes with the skill level that Lopez had. He showed it. He put those divisions on the map at the next level. And you talk about skill level in those weight classes, nobody did it like Ricardo Lopez. That's why they called him Finito, because he knew how to finish, and he did it to Alex Sanchez 28 years ago. And Sanchez was no pushover. He got some solid wins himself. He himself beat Will Grigsby. Problem was, when he fought in the ring with Ricardo Lopez, he was so far behind Lopez, Lopez couldn't even see him out of his rearview mirror. That's just how great Ricardo Lopez was. And Alex Sanchez was no pushover. Lopez just mopped him up. And nobody in that weight class comes close. I mean, Michael Carbajal and Amari Cheetah Gonzalez have the accolades, but not the sustained excellence that Ricardo Lopez had in those weight classes. And he's far away, bar none, the greatest in those weight classes, in my opinion. Strawweight, light flyweight. Anybody in any era wouldn't even touch this guy, because you're talking about skill and will. Like all the Mexican fighters, he was one of those ones that presented it and showed it. It goes to how great Ricardo Lopez was in those weight classes. A thing of beauty. So like what Alexis Arguello was, the same way like Lopez. No area, not one thing they do is particularly great, but they were efficient, they were solid, they were consistent, and because they were efficient, solid, and consistent, their consistency ran through for the longest time, and that's why they're all-time greats. And we talk about all-time great Latino fighters. Ricardo Lopez is definitely in that conversation. In my opinion, top 10, probably top 3 or 4 Mexican fighter of all time. We talk about great Mexican fighters. Some put him number 1. I will not dispute it. I will not argue it. He's definitely worthy of that conversation. That's how great Ricardo Finito Lopez was at 105 and 108. Nobody in those weight classes could even lace his boots. Don't even try it. Oh, back in those days, you couldn't even get see those guys on television. They were more off TV when you talk about Ricardo Lopez. But when we finally got the television gigs, especially on Showtime under Don King, especially when he beat Will Grigsby, he finally got his just due. Well earned, well respected, did it the hard way. Basically was on prelims with guys like Chavez, Tyson, and everybody else. But when he finally got his main events, he finally got his respect. And I heard he's not doing all that well, so say a prayer for Finito Lopez, a phenomenal fighter. And I conclude this is my 1-year anniversary of doing this, because I get asked these questions all the time. You know, I'll just say that I have the 30% of my battery. I'll just waste it out, because I got to go to bed after this anyways. I enjoy doing this. I mean, it's the most fun thing. I mean, people say do this, do that. I mean, fine. Let me just clear a couple things up real quick, because I get asked this. I do nothing for monetary reasons, because I gain nothing out of it. I already have a job I do for monetary reasons, and I stick to that. This here is to tell the whole world what I feel and how I feel, because we're in the era now where this tells it all. You like me, you cannot like me. I don't care. Because when I did this 6 or 7 years ago, you know, my biggest regret was not sticking it out. I mean, I was training the right way, but I didn't stick it out. This time, it's a whole new different ball game, because I'm learning how to stick it out. And I'm taking the show to bigger ventures. We talk about the platforms like Apple, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. I'm looking for bigger ventures as I go along. I do this gradually. I don't have any narratives. I see everything out there, and I do analysis. I don't pretend to be an insider, because that's not going to get me anywhere. I don't pay people or these subscriptions for their news, because it doesn't get me anywhere. I listen and I read. You can be credible. You can be not credible. I'll give you my analysis. But as I told all you guys before, you're not going to like what I have to say, because I'm not going to be here and lie just for the sake of clickbait or views. It's not going to get me anywhere. As I said, if you're doing this for clickbait and views, you're doing this all wrong. If you're doing this because you like to do it and you want it to be honest with how you do it, then you're doing it for the right reasons. And I'm talking about the boxing community that, you know, some of the people there, they have their weird opinions. And of course, the creators here in Cincinnati, who are just the biggest bunch of morons when it comes to how they do things, like Zim, the captain, Kelsey Conway, just to name a few of them, because they all do it wrong. And there's a reason why I stay in my own lane away from all of that, because they want to engage in ways that sets fireworks off, and I refuse to. I refuse to. Why? Because I know my audience. My audience doesn't like to partake in this, partake in it. They don't like to shell out money for something that they can get free everywhere else. And I know I have to study my audience. I have to study my target market. I have to study my advertising, and I do everything without having to spend a dime. And I don't ask for dimes either, because it's the most the wrong thing I would ever do when doing this. That's something that I forbid myself to do. And ever since I did it, your views do it for me. I don't brag about it. I don't talk about it. I just put the product. You guys do whatever you want to do with it. You like it? Great. You don't like it? Great. I'm not here to stir up internet fights like everyone does here in Cincinnati when it comes to the Bengals fan base. I'm not want to give weird predictions or talk about weird historical aspects like some people do in the boxing community. I just take things in my own way. Everything I do, there's only one person that does everything I do, and that's myself. I'm my own producer. I'm my own analyst. I'm my own, equipment manager. I'm my own. I said my own analyst. I'm many other things. Everything I do is on my own. I don't welcome anything or anybody, because I don't partake in narratives. I don't partake in your narratives to fill your views. And I just do my own thing, and I enjoy it, and I love it. And those are the things I'm going to just back down. I'm not going anywhere. I said, you can have all your opinions you want about me. I don't care. But when people resort to, I said this before, when it comes to people in Cincinnati, when it comes to people using the block button, you show your cowardice, especially in Cincinnati. They're the worst at it. You guys are driving down the wrong way on a one-way street. Don't expect that from me. If you want to openly disagree with me, go ahead, have at it. I'll gladly engage in a conversation, because that's part of what debating is, isn't it? But the second you resort to using the block button or calling me every name in the book, it's not going to get you anywhere. Even then, I won't use a block button. I'll just walk away from it. Some of you guys in this community who I love to death, and a lot of you guys who got me started with this, I love to death. And those are the ones I speak up for. The spaces I do with, twice a week, an individual from Kansas who I've done a show with, they helped me out. They got me to this point. I'm the one that spun it off. I thank you guys. And I just said, this is my first full year going in, and I barely ever scratched the surface. I'm just getting started. The fun is about to begin. Website's coming up, among many other things. More platforms, more content. I'm going to be digging deeper. For those of you in the fight community, I'm going to give you a heads up. Over the next several weeks, it'll be more NFL content for myself, given that we have the NFL season coming up. And that is what it is. Shoot, even people around my own local, here locally, ask me about my stuff. I say it again. I don't not like the guys at ESPN who talk about their own topics. Everyone gets equal treatment from me, equal topics from me, past to the present. I put them together and help you guys build a better future. Isn't that what that's all about, or what should be? Not monetary gain or trying to stir up a riot on the internet, because that's one of those sissy things you could ever do. I'll never do that. I mean, my takes might be a little opinionated, but that's what the platform is for, isn't it? Just be you. That's what I'm doing. I'll be talking more about this week, because I never thought I would last a year doing this. I really didn't. And that'll wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. Actually, my battery is about to wear out, and it's about time for me to hit the sack. For those of you who miss any parts of my shows, all of my episodes have now been uploaded to the Apple Podcast, the iHeartRadio, and the Spotify apps. Soon to come into Sirius XM. Also, if you have the TuneIn broadcast apps, it's on there also. Finding new platforms each and every day as time flies by. And as always, I conclude by saying to everybody, make self-care your number one priority in all walks of life. If you take care of yourself first, all the good things come your way. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else matters in all of life. Only thing matters is you. Just focus on you and take care of yourself first. Have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. God bless. I will be back tomorrow night. I'll see you then.